Hi, my name is Joseph Flowers. I am doing this video to showcase a test, pen test that I performed for my cybersecurity course at Northwestern Michigan College. For this test, I created a fictitious company named Security Event Response Analytics, or SARA for short. The company is a cybersecurity startup company that performs consulting and pen testing for small to medium-sized businesses. I created a master source agreement that is very full of legal talk. Mostly about violating terms of service, non-payment, what we are expected to do. Created a statement of work for the pen test. Statement of work involved testing another fictitious company on my home network. ADDSS actually stands for Active Directory Domain Services. And we have a web and data server running at 192.168.144. That's actually a Metasploitable VM running on my PC. Active Directory Domain Controller, another VM at 101, also running on my PC. DNS server running on a Raspberry Pi. And there are a few workstations, some of them virtual, some of them regular, and a couple of other Pis. Created a non-disclosure agreement. The CEO of the fictitious company for ADDSS is John Hancock, and some authorization documentation, which everything is pretty much described in the other documents, so this is just validating mostly the work to be done in the other documents. For this test, I created a security report for my company, Automated Security Event Response Analytics. In this report, spelled out the confidentiality statement, the vulnerabilities, prioritize them, describe the assets tested. Then we go down to describing the vulnerabilities, what exactly is wrong with them, attack scenarios, some of the tags that can be used, supplied some evidence. So obviously most of the vulnerabilities occurred on the Metasploitable machine. There were a few small ones on my domain controller and the other workstations, but those were mostly pretty well patched and updated already. I created videos for each of the tests, including the mapping and enumeration. A tool I used during... Hi, my name is Joseph. During this test was the Raspberry Pi with Pwn4Pi installed on it, which I used against the domain controller and a few other systems. Just to give you a little idea what that is, it's a Raspberry Pi Zero. It comes with a web interface, and you can create scripts on it, mostly with PowerShell for Windows, or say shell-based for Linux systems. You can set it up as a wireless device. You can set it up as... So for this one I actually used it, we sliced out a channel of the target's Wi-Fi interface and created a reverse shell back to itself. So that way whenever it was within range, it would create an SSID, and it would send information back and forth. It's a little slow, but it works for getting stuff going. After that I created a reverse shell payload with MS Venom. Turned off Windows Defender, and I think this also turns off some of the firewall properties, real-time monitoring. So then we created our reverse payload with MSF Venom. Was able to get into a target user machine that also had the default administrator account for the domain on it, and I was able to get that password and crack it with Hashcat. Just had a simple password setup, 123456, just to illustrate how easy those were to crack. It was about 2 seconds in Hashcat. I also used Responder to test for share hashes, NTLM version 2 hashes. So if someone types in a share wrong, Responder will say, hey, that's me, and they will send it as credentials. I actually had where I just started to type in a share, but didn't finish or even hit enter, and it had already captured the system's hash. And then I was able to crack that with Hashcat. In my VMs, just because they don't have video cards, I was using John the Ripper. If we go to the Metasploitable, I did a denial of service test. Pretty simple. I tried a few different tools, hping3, just straight ping, running on a few different Kali systems, some of them virtual, some Raspberry Pis, and an Armbian system using cluster software, mpyexec, to distribute the command. Those pretty much just slowed them down a little bit. It was not a full denial of service. What I was successful with was slow HTTP test. Pretty much immediately took down Metasploitable. First run, it took down my Raspberry Pi DNS server. When we hit about 300 concurrent connections, second round it actually took it down right away. I don't know if it was just already feeling bogged down from that. Also against the Metasploitable, I enumerated, checked all the different services, Found some that were definitely exploitable. Ran a few different, like a web crawl with Paros. Tried out Armitage. Got 3 shells to open the first time, 5 to open the second time. PHP shells. Was able to cat the passwd file and the shadow file. Was explaining some of the problems that I found, and then I also found Armitage didn't do this one, but there's a telnet or SFTP VSFTP error in the version they were running, where if you try to log in with a smiley face as a username, it opens up port 6200 and you are just able to telnet right in. So from there I also dumped the passwd and the shadow file, and was able to use John after concatenating the files together to crack the passwords. That took a little longer, a few hours, just because I was running on a VM. Did a short web application assessment. Just checked it, file inclusion with DVWA. Was able to get in using this. Check out the passwd file. I didn't try to use any of the default passwords to get in here, which would have worked. So the shadow didn't open. Tried out some SQL injection. Look for fields. We got usernames. And with the usernames, I was able to get the hashes, which again are pretty easily cracked, especially if they were all simple words, nothing complex. I also checked out Nictoverse. That actually gives you some pretty good information as to attack vectors on the Metasploitable machine. Just some basic enumeration on the network. I said IoT file server that was decommissioned, so its security certificates no longer work, but the default passwords were able to get into the system, which pretty much just gives you a list of file names. Nothing really useful beyond that, besides some network enumeration. And I ran a few tests against actual domains, just to check the functionality of some programs. Here I am running it against CompTIA. This is using ReconNG. It's a simple program, so you could use it on, say, a Raspberry Pi or something simple, or a remote system pretty easily. So there are a few random tools I use. My proxy chain setup I used when going against targets on the internet, just so I wasn't able to be traced back, at least not easily. Simple ping script, just messing around with scripting a little bit. I also have a script here for creating scripts that I wrote. Just gives you some basic guidelines for creating a script, nothing fancy. There's a few other tools I use. I had some other Hashcat stuff in here. I was using a modified version of the Brock-U where I'd added quite a few passwords to it that I thought should have been in there. Some of the basic password 1, 2, 3s, that sort of thing that were missing. So that's an overview of my sample pen test that I did on my virtual network on my home system. Thank you for checking out this video.